Hello and welcome back to the One Take Show podcast. My name is Kaustubh. In this episode, we are in conversation with Mr. Jayant Bhatt. Sir is an advocate in New Delhi, and truly, this is one of the most important conversations that I've had. And I'm really grateful that Sir has given me this opportunity to really talk about something that I believe a lot of young litigants should really learn about: how to become a successful criminal lawyer, and also something very relevant these days, the current trends in court contempt proceedings. If you like this episode, make sure you like, share and subscribe to the channel. If you have any suggestions or feedbacks, write them down in the comment section. I would love to read them. Hence, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's jump right in. Hello, sir. Welcome to the One Take Show podcast. I am truly honored to have this opportunity to speak with you. I think every law student who follows you on LinkedIn is truly a fan of every post that you've ever posted. It is truly knowledgeable to be a part of this journey and to actually be at the receiving end of all the knowledge that you have given us over these years. Thank you so much for taking time off your really busy schedule and sitting down with me for this conversation.
Thank you so much, Kaustubh, and your channel One Take Show for having me. I think, knowledge, I keep saying, is a two-way street, So I don't think it's just me who is giving knowledge or imparting knowledge. I think I'm also learning a lot from, all the young ones. Like just before the session, we're chatting about how to start a podcast. Like I have such knowledge about that. But this is something, I always aspire to be in terms of gaining knowledge, is to gain from the youth, because, most of the innovation in the world has been spearheaded by young people. And most of the new things have been spearheaded by young people. I think except Stan Lee, who started Marvel Comics when he was really old. I think more or less, I don't know when he started, but he was the champion for starting that. But I think by and large, the youth has guided the world.
Right, sir. I think this is the...
Thank you, rather. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think it's truly an honor for me and this podcast that I'm receiving such really enlightening words from you. And I think as a youth, these are the benchmarks that I personally would like to live by and live up to. And perhaps everyone would like to strive for the same. So before we work towards the theme of this episode, which I think is extremely interesting, there are two major topics that we're going to talk about. I think it's essentially important that law students particularly learn from your personal experience, which I think comes from the question of why did you decide to go ahead with law, and what was your experience with litigation in the first place, sir?
So I'll answer the first question first. Law, I would say, not a need, but as a vocation arose because I was a science student in class 11th and 12th, and science was never really my cup of tea, and the subjects never, piqued my interest. And as luck would have it, I ended up, pursuing law as a career, as a full-fledged career, because in my time when I entered law school, the 5-year law course was already a concept getting developed in India, and back in those days, Amity was the first 5-year law course to be offered in Delhi, amongst other few national schools in the country, which had also opened around the same time, I think in 99, early 2000. So I enrolled in law school in 2002. And, that was a very conscious decision by me that I have to do now, live and die with law as a vocation, because once you, spend 5 years in law school, that's a substantial time of your life. It's almost half a decade you are, doing something. And once you have, completed those 5 years, then the next challenge is what will you do? Because if you want to do litigation, the challenge is not just about half a decade. I think it's a decade and continuing, because I'm now almost a decade plus 2-3 years older in the profession. So challenges never, subside. They always keep on growing. So choosing litigation was more out of passion, because in law school, I was a very active mooter. I did a lot of moot courts. The idea was always not to bunk law school, but to travel, to explore the world, to go to other law schools, meet people, and experience life in other institutions. And that, I think, gravitated me literally towards my journey as a litigator, because most of my internships ended up being in litigating offices or litigation law offices. Moot courts were, I think, a very important motivating factor for me. So all those things clubbed together, I think I never then had a doubt in my mind that I have to pursue litigation as a career, and that is what I'm doing right now. I'm loving every day of it.
Right, sir. And I think it is absolutely inspirational. Anyone who would like to follow your footsteps would be absolutely astounded by everything that you have established. I think one major point here, I think it would be criminal on my part not to ask you this question, but what suggestions would you have for law students today who are perhaps seeking to follow your similar footpath or are trying to make their mark in litigation? Especially the ones who are perhaps the first generation lawyers, law students who find litigation a little more daunting than any other such field. What suggestions would you have for them?
I think, look, every generation is different, but the temperament always remains the same. So you take lawyers about 50 years ago. To them, law was not a first choice. With my generation, law became a first choice, and with your generation, definitely it's one of the top priority these days, along with engineering, medicine, or management. Because people now clearly see that there are monetary rewards attached to it. You don't have to be a litigating lawyer. You don't have to be struggling at the start of your career. You can decide to be an in-house lawyer or a think tank personality or a law firm person. So a lot of options are open there. But having said that, one thing that we don't realize is that life moves at its own pace. It's when I was a student, I thought, I would conquer the world in 2 years of entering the profession. That's not how it works, because the world has this whole equation of, I would not say flattening the curve, but bringing you down to reality. Saying, look, things take time. It's something like making food. So if you think you are going to, snap your finger and like any magical show on TV, the food is going to present itself. It's not like that. Things take time. You need to understand how to understand the judiciary, how the system is working, how to read a file, how to present your argument before a court, how to handle an office environment. There are so many dynamics, related to developing yourself as a budding litigating lawyer or as a litigator. And then you have to understand, different mindsets, because every client will treat you differently, and you will treat clients differently according to your, experience. So, what I will say is, in my time when I was starting out, internet was already there. Mobile phone was something new. We did not have 3G in my time. It was a concept which we heard of, which was going to be introduced. When I started my career, I was given a BlackBerry by my law firm, and it was smooth because BlackBerry, had a push notification. You would get email and everything. And this is, I'm telling you, 2008. Now we are in 2020. So 12 years down the line, today, every kid has a smartphone in their hand. Right. So the pace with which technology has evolved over the years, has really caught up with all of us, whether it is the younger generation or the elder generation. Now the problem with this pace is the speed at which the technology moves. Our mind moves faster, and we are never content with the speed of life, because life still has its own pace, as I said. If today you are going to make as I said, a meal, you still have to open a gas stove, you still have to boil the water, or if you are making pulses or rice, it will take its own time. Technology cannot make it faster. It can give you some hacks how to do cooking, but it cannot say that without opening a packet of a rice or a pulse, you can have a properly cooked meal. So similarly, when you want to do litigation, there is no way which is a fast way. You will have to go through, you'll have to undergo all the difficult challenges which come with it. You will have to take time out to understand the dynamics of the profession, because that is the pace of life. Technology can help you, yes, in finding something quickly because of the online research which has come. People used to spend a lot of time previously with hardbound books. Today we have digital, research websites and apps. We have apps which are indicating what your next court hearing is going to be. So digitization has changed, but it hasn't changed the basics of the profession, I would say. And today you still have to go and make an argument before a court of law. You still have to do your research. So what I want to tell through this narrative to the younger generation is, please don't be in a rush. Just because you are holding a 4G and today the newspapers say that 5G is being launched tomorrow, as a human being, you cannot still beat a car. The moment you start running in whatever circuit you are running, you will start getting out of breath after 500 or 1 kilometer, because you are human. So don't compare yourself to technology. Don't be in a rat race. Don't compare yourself to your friends, to your peers, because everybody is different. I would not tell people that be like me. I'll tell people, please be like yourself, because you are so unique. And that is one thing I realized when I was in the profession. Everybody, the moment you land up in a court corridor, people are talking of all the high-profile lawyers, successful lawyers, famous lawyers. And one thing I realized is, okay, these are good lawyers. I also respect them. But what is good for them is not good for me. I have to find my own path. It's something like what Morpheus tell Neo in the Matrix. You have to choose the pill and you have to walk the path. It's something like that.
Right.
So to all the young students who are out there, please choose your path. Please don't be confused. It always takes a while to decide what is right for us, but that doesn't mean that we'll not make mistakes. Please make mistakes, because that's the only way to learn. So make mistakes and find your own path. Don't try to copy somebody else because their life story has been completely different from your life story.
Right, sir, absolutely. And I think these words coming from your worldwide experience rather has a special kind of an impact on every law student's life when they're trying to understand, especially cope up with the pressure that this pandemic time has given every law student, the kind of anxiety, the competition that is now stemming all around us to keep up with that. And I have been personally, I think we've been lucky enough to be surrounded by the technology that is giving us the guidance that we need as of this moment. I have personally been very lucky to follow your previous webinars, especially the one on white collar crime. I think it was one of the most important webinars that I've attended. This has given me an opportunity to perhaps talk about something which has not been particularly addressed and especially is a concern for students who are moving towards laws which are tied with litigation, especially the criminal law. And that would form my first question for you, sir, is that you obviously now have established everything with respect to this practice, but what would you suggest from your own experience perhaps are the essential features or the cornerstone features for a successful criminal practice, and how should perhaps law students go about it?
I think the thumb rule goes to is very simple. Please start with trial courts. I did not start with trial court, but trial court was the last station for me before I went independent. But that experience has enriched me for life. The valuable lessons that I have learned from my trial court practice as a junior lawyer, with my tutelage and my senior, has been a life-changing experience for me. So I would say to any audience of yours or any young lawyer who is listening to this podcast is please start with a trial court experience, or if you don't want to start it, at least experience it once in your lifetime. That is extremely crucial and important, because if you don't experience trial, and at least on the criminal side, because every criminal matter in this country starts the trial court. So if you do not know how FIRs are lodged, how they are handled, how the charge sheet is filed, how trial courts function, I'm not saying that it's obviously very naive for anyone to say that you will not make a successful appellate court lawyer or a high court or Supreme Court lawyer. There have been numerous lawyers who have never done trial but have been successful in the appellate stage. But if you do trial court practice, and in my experience, because I'm lucky to cover all the three forums, it gives you a different insight into practice. So the more time you invest in a trial practice, the moment you go to an appellate court, it's easier for you to quickly scale down your points and put the points across the judge.
Okay.
So I think please it's a very, very valuable experience, and nobody should skip it. At least try to do it for a year or two, if not more, because the running around in different trial courts, the pace with which it works, seeing the difficulty of young judges who are sitting there, it will make you realize so many things which are very difficult to explain either over a webinar or a podcast, because I may share my experience with you, but to experience these experiences, you have to be at that place which I'm talking about.
Right, sir. Absolutely. And I think the fact that a lot of law students today, and I say this from experience from my own peers, do not look forward to working in trial courts. And this is something that is essentially important, as you pointed out. But with respect to the practice in itself, criminal practice has always been, now as I speak from the peers that I surround myself with, we are rather inclined towards commercial corporate practice or something that has provided us the kind of returns that we see around us. Do you think that this atmosphere needs to change, that there is something about criminal law practice from experience that we law students should realize in order to reignite that interest which should lie for criminal law practice?
No, I'll tell you why. Look, I always tell people, please pursue passion. Right. If it's commercial which interests you, by all means, please pursue it. If it's intellectual property or civil litigation, please, do not curb your passion. For me, most of my internships were in criminal law school. And I think knowingly or unknowingly, it gravitated me to the practice of criminal law. Also, when I started my career, automatically criminal matters started coming my way. Because nobody in my batch or most of the people I knew were not doing criminal law. Because people have a roadblock in their head that, we defend the scum of the earth. That's what people think. And, many times when I go to or I used to. Now in COVID-19, it's not happening. But when I used to socialize a lot more and go to parties, and other events, people would say, "Oh, you are a criminal lawyer." I'm like, "Yeah." They would take 4 steps back. They're like, I'm like, "Please don't be afraid. I defend people like you. Honest, respectable people.
Okay.
They're just like you and I." So, to just do an ice breaking thing. But criminal law, like any other law, you have to defend people. I don't think people get scared thinking of that you're defending criminal. You are rubbing your shoulders with particular type of societal creatures. I don't think it's that. But having said that, I think it's a fantastic field. It's a matter of passion if you want to do it. I would say it's not everybody's cup of tea, because sometimes legality and morality can be really challenging at one go. You may be grappling with a lot of things, your thought processes, your upbringing, the values that you have. Just to give a brief narrative, my nani, my grandmother, maternal grandmother, when I became a lawyer, she was not very happy. But when I chose to become a criminal lawyer, she did so. Like literally, she's like, "Now stop talking to me. You're chosen a till the time you're a lawyer, I was okay. Now that you're chosen to be a criminal lawyer, stop talking to me. I'm not talking to you." So I have to really pacify her. I have to tell her, "Look, it's not that bad. Somebody needs to be defended, and a lawyer needs to defend them." So people, still have that notion that that criminal law it's tough, yes, because when you're starting out and the type of matters that we see these days, either it be a ED or a PMLA or a fancy corporate fraud or a dirham or whatever. These cases will only come to you after certain years of practice, when you have built your reputation in the market, when people know you for who you are, when people realize your goodwill and your brand, and that takes time. People who are senior to me in the profession, from whom I have learned, who have spent, let's say, good 30-40 years in the bar, people go to them because they are so seasoned. Even if I today have a doubt, I'll pick up a phone and speak to my mentor. "Sir, please tell me, I have this query. How would you do this?" So experience cannot be replaced with anything. So I would tell the youth, please pursue criminal law if you think it's your passion. There is nothing wrong with it. And whatever you may do in life, criminal law, I think, is one law which covers almost every aspect of every other legal field. If there's an intellectual property fraud, criminal law comes into being. If there is basic cheating and forgery, criminal law comes into being. If there are white collar crime, you speak of adulteration, you speak of forgery, you speak of spam, you speak of corporate frauds, you speak of of unfair competition, you speak of SEC. Whenever there is or even the GSTs, if there is a fake GST bill, there will be criminal prosecution. So you cannot escape from the criminal liability, at least in this country, or by and large in most of the countries. So it's such a fascinating field. You don't have to do a regular criminal case, you don't want to, but you have to start from there and then build up on your reputation along the way.
Absolutely. And as you point out, obviously the criminal law is so extensive and it's so indulging, and everyone who has a passion for it would definitely love it. And it's something that we need to find our passion in. But there's one question that I, as a law student, feel is that there are certain set of skills that are essentially required for one to excel in criminal law, especially when it comes to things like perhaps cross-examination or evidences, or perhaps dealing with the clients or dealing with the prosecution or stuff like that. Do you recognize there are certain set of skills that any aspirant who is perhaps trying to pursue criminal litigation or is joining a chamber that specializes in criminal litigation should have in order to perhaps have an advantage over their peers when it comes to making their mark as a young aspiring lawyer?
I think when you are trying to intern with all the branches of criminal law, intern with the public prosecutor, intern with the defense lawyer, and intern with the judge. And if possible, intern with the investigating officer also, or if police is offering internship. People don't normally think about it. Go to a cyber, in fact, go to forensic labs also. Mm-hmm. If you really want to know how these different branches assess the code differently, the only thing that you normally hear is which charge sheet file. Charge sheet has been filed. But how does it come to be? A charge sheet is investigating by police officer, forensic reports are appended to it. If there's a medical report which has taken place, intern with the doctor, intern with the hospital. Why don't we think about this? Because these things are not told to people openly. And I always encourage students, if you really have to have a finesse in a field, then you need to explore all these eventualities, which are a very, very crucial part of any criminal trial. So and even you can intern in one of the big fours, which do a lot of forensic audits. In any white collar crime, forensic audits are involved. But for these, people have to inform each other. And we are still, I think, so far as the internships are concerned, people still want to do the regular traditional internships. So look, there is nothing bad in it, but you have 5 years of law school to plan your internships. right? So one internship or two internships you can do with the trial court or high court or the Supreme Court. That's how the normal hierarchy goes, and every law student is doing it by and large. But why not go to a hospital? Why don't go to a police agency? Why don't go to a cyber cell? Why don't go to forensics? All those things have to be experienced and explored by students.
Right, sir.
मतलब आपको कोई रोक नहीं रहा ना इंटर्नशिप करने से, तो फिर क्यों रोक रहे हैं आप?
Right, sir. I think this is perhaps the most transformative idea that I've had. And no one has ever told us this, that we could actually perhaps go into forensics and intern there, or perhaps intern with the police agency. That would be so exciting and such a learning experience for any law student. And I think I personally need to perhaps introspect a lot with respect to my plans for internships now. But now I think this is perfect ground for me when it comes to the aspiring lawyers and their dreams. As we see today, there is a huge turnaround. There's a lot of changes happening in the legal field around us. One of them is specifically the changing landscape and the traditional trends of how the contempts before the courts are now evolving. So before we wrap this conversation up, I would definitely take this opportunity to ask you about your opinion on contempts of the court and how these recent trends have perhaps given you some sort of an inspiration or idea as to how they're evolving.
Look, what people don't realize these days, or I would say people who are aligning their lives with technology, is that this trend is not recent. Just that information is all over the place, so the access is better.
Right.
Talk about the Contempt of Court Act. It's an old act. It's not a 2020 act. It was not enacted this year. Just that with news and media and with so much of information, or as I say, infodemic, it's an information pandemic, which is all over the place, especially during Corona. People have a very easy access to information because everybody has a smartphone. The moment they swipe, even the basic information which is regarding the court is out there. When I was a law student, we never had all these legal websites to, exclusive legal websites supporting news. Today, you at least have 5 to 10 websites and so many youth organizations involved in this that, information is all over the place. That is one. So people think that when information is commonplace, it is a recent phenomenon. No, it's not a recent phenomenon, because if you look at contempt of court judgments over the number of years since we have gained independence, either of Supreme Court or various high courts, they have been there. So it's not a recent phenomenon. That is one thing we need to realize. And second, you cannot take the court for a ride. You cannot, browbeat the court mercilessly and expect them to forgive you. A fundamental right, every law student knows that it's not absolute. And even if you're sitting in your household, or if you go to, if you're invited at some place, would you go and start rebuking your host or start abusing them? I mean, I'm not taking of culture or Sanskriti or Parampara. I'm talking about basic etiquettes and demeanor. So, when we talk of different people, and I'm not naming names here, but, when you're showing a middle finger, when you're alleging specification against the Chief Justice of India, when you're casting aspersion on an institution, so this is new. Not the Contempt of Court Act, but the way the contempt is happening is new. And this is what we need to understand and differentiate. 50 years ago, I don't think a newspaper would have said कि Supreme Court संघी है या कांग्रेसिया है या एक फलाना पार्टी का है. ये नहीं होता ना. So today, because of technology and easy access to phone, as I said, smartphone, phones are smart and people are becoming dumb and dumber, unfortunately. And then they try to take the courts for a ride. And then when courts say, okay, now I'm issuing you contempt, they're like, how can the court do that? Why can't the court do that? You can rebuke judges. Judges out of custom do not come before the media and rebut your arguments. So वही होता है ना कि भले इंसान को और कुछ सुनाता रहता है. तो अगर आप कोर्ट की भलमानसता को देखते हैं, so this does not give you a fundamental right to rebuke the system which is protecting you, essentially. So right, this is what people need to understand.
Absolutely. I think I just have one follow-up question on that. There is one running argument from the one side of this debate is that how do we draw a line between criticizing the judgment of a court and perhaps crossing that line to, as you said, rebuking or abusing the court or actually qualifying for the contempt? How does one, especially a law student who understands freedom of speech and understands contempt of court, would perhaps draw that line in your opinion?
See, that's a problem not just with the law student, but with the people who are not lawyers also. Because you end up criticizing a judgment without knowing how the judiciary works or how the registry of a court works. So if you know that, then it's fine. For example, let's say the Arnab Goswami matter, because of which Kunal Kamra has invited contempt. He needs to understand how the registry works, or anybody for that matter needs to understand how the registry works. Now you can question if the registry has been unfair in marking a matter out of turn. That is something you can raise before a court and genuinely question that, look, this should not have happened. We need to question that registry is being impartial. If that is something, even Mr. Dushyant Dave, being the president, has written a long article on it. He has raised objection because he's not crossing the line. He knows how the court functions. But to say outright that you cannot give bail to a particular person is wrong, because that is a matter of merit of a particular case.
Right.
And I'm not, and you compare the number of matters. Arnab Goswami is just one highlighted matter because he is in the media. He himself is a media personality. So that gains prominence in the eyes of people. But if you see a weekly list of court cases, let's say I'm only talking Supreme Court, you take out the causes and see how many bail matters were listed and how many were rejected, and how many bail applications were granted. Take a data, but nobody is collating that data. Na? People are busy taking on juicy gossip and rebuking our court system. So where is the data in this country? Because people, by and large, don't believe in taking data.
Right.
Mirch masala aa raha hai, usme aur namak mirch laga ke chalo pel do. That's the problem. So, all these things don't work. Show me a data. Show me one organization which has taken a data which shows कि Supreme Court इतने matters सुनता है. You have a national judicial data grid, a government run. आप उसको खोलिए, उसमें पूरा data आता है. पर वो तो किसी ने देखना नहीं है. क्योंकि कोर्ट पंचिंग बैग है ना हमारा. कोर्ट को सब लोगों को मुक्का बहुत मजा आता है. आप कोर्ट को मुक्का मत मारिए. And I'm not saying everything is right with the court. There are certain things which I also get personally offended about. But as an institution, I respect our court system. As a first generation practicing lawyer, I have seen so many number of good judges giving impartial, good judgments and honest, hardworking people in the court. And there are people like me and you, first generation judges, first generation lawyers. So to my mind, there is absolutely nothing to doubt about, doubting the integrity of the court system. And that is what people need to understand.
Absolutely, sir. I think this is the section of this conversation that I would particularly and separately clip out and circulate with all my friends, especially on my every social media platform, because this was very eye-opening. I think your statement about how people don't understand how the registry works and start perhaps throwing allegations on Supreme Court, where it is actually a matter of registry, and we've had senior advocates who've raised concerns without crossing the line, is something that can be done and perhaps could have been done in certain places. Really solves this entire debate around contempt. And this entire conversation, sir, was extremely eye-opening. Especially we talk about your experience, your tips and tricks for the students, your suggestions for the ones who are trying to find their place in criminal law practice, and finally understanding how the contempts of the court in current changing times works. As you pointed out, the nature of the contempt is perhaps something that is changing, not the law. Law has been here for a long time. Thank you so much, sir. Do you have any closing remarks for our viewers before we wrap this up?
I think all I would say is law, and as a lawyer, one thing we keep hearing is application of mind. कि अपना दिमाग इस्तेमाल कीजिए, है ना? तो ये बहुत ज़रूरी है कि as a budding lawyer, as a young lawyer, or even as a practicing lawyer, application of mind is paramount. And if you don't apply yourself and let your emotions be clouded and your judgment be clouded by social media posts, Instagram stories, tweets, then I would say it would be wrong. You are a lawyer. You are supposed to be a very, very important officer of the court. You are going to make submissions which may be publicly quoted tomorrow. You may be assisting the court in absolutely ground and path-breaking judgments. So you have to be at the top of your game. You have to be equally responsible, not just to the court, but to the citizens and to the public of this country, because there is a very, very delicate balance, that is lying on your shoulder, and not too many of us realize about that. So I would say, whatever lawyer you are, criminal, civil, corporate, doesn't matter. We all have a responsibility to the society. और यही कारण है यार, कौस्तुभ की लोग हमें वकील साहब कहते हैं, वकील साहिबा कहते हैं, इज्जत दी जाती है. एक जो तर्जुमा है जो साहब साहिबा का लगा हमारे साथ, तो इसलिए दिया जाता है ना, क्योंकि people value your knowledge, people value your experience. So let's try to keep that intact, and let's try to bring more respect to the profession. As my end remark is all I want to say.
Absolutely, sir. I think these are the words that I personally would love to live by, and perhaps something that I would love to live up to, along with everyone who would view this podcast, listen to this podcast, would take away so much from this episode. Thank you so much, sir, for your valuable insights, and thank you so much for taking time for this conversation. I had a wonderful time.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good time too, sir.
Lovely. Enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.